Tali, head bobbing. I'm refreshing, style at the fast rocking. I'm refreshing, style at the
Let me fade that out so professionally. Ah, this is a great track, man. Matt slept on. Okay. Hey guys, how are you? Okay, I hope it's not doing that annoying thing where it's like gonna moderate you guys, because I tried to take that off. I'm hoping. But yeah, oh, by the way, don't sleep on the USPS like merch section like I did, because they have amazing shit. Look at this. Look at this. Also, it's an easy way to, like, you know, support the USPS, and we all need to. Look at this shit. Look at that. Look. It's amazing. Oh, but wait. Oh shit. Oh shit. Amazing. And guess what? Guess what it comes with? Sorry, this is amazing. Look at this shit. You can't take this one to Joy. Hell no. Hell no. Man. Isn't it though? Isn't it like freaking adorable? Oh my god. Okay. Oh my, I'm such a nerd, you guys. I'm so glad I copped this one. Ready? Are you ready? Oh my god, I'm such a nerd, but you guys know that. Look at the patches, is amazing. Anyway, okay, enough of my nerding out. So, okay, so I meant to come on here like right after I was at the Justice Center, but like, I don't know, like I don't know if there was like off leaching of like tear gas or some shit, but like I felt like shit for like a week after that. Like, it's so, like, I don't know. Like, maybe I'm just like a pansy and I'm like just not cut out for war. But like, man, that was awful. Like, anyway, but that's an aside. The reason I'm here is because I want to talk to you guys about what happened like right after I happened to have left. Which is that a group that goes by, oh, yeah, whiteboard, I'm professional, Patriot Prayer. I hope this is the right way for you guys. I hate when like everything flips everything. Patriot Prayer, that's what they call themselves, opened fire into the crowd from a moving car and then threw a pipe bomb. So like that group that I showed you guys in that like 2-minute thing right in front of, that was like, you know, waving the flags and like right in front of that. Yeah. And this is all like, you can find this, it's all out there. Like, I wasn't sure if I should like play the footage like as I first came on here, because it's pretty intense. But yeah, no, we have it, like, I mean, people have it, I mean, but like it's crowdsourced from like several different angles. We know who did it, and yeah, just I mean, it's a miracle that no one died that day. Oh, you don't have to retract that. Did it do that automatically? Let me know. I'm trying to fix this thing, and I'm sorry if it's like annoying to you guys. But yeah, it was a weird vibe that day. But yeah, that group that was in front of the, oh no, it did. Shit, what is it? Okay, I think, okay, well, let me see if I can like fix this from here. That's bullshit. Like, I kept trying to find it earlier, and like, ugh, I don't know what happened. Oh wait, I think I should be able to change it in the studio? Let's hope. Let's see if I can do this. Oh god, help me. Watch, now it'll be like the one time I remember to tweet it out, I have to like restart, and then I'll forget to tweet it out. Brilliant. Wonderful, Faye. Okay. So it should show that like, go to channel comments maybe? Oh yeah, I'm in Washington, right outside of Portland, Oregon. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm originally from the Northeast, like Philly. Yeah, well, outside Philly. But you know. Okay, why is it doing this shit? Oh wait, okay, let me try like disabling this thing. Maybe if I disable this, maybe it'll boop. Hello. Oh, nope. Oh, there you go. Okay, let me try this again. Refresh. Sorry guys. But yeah, so I actually have like a couple audio clips to play you guys to like kind of, because I realize that a lot of people don't know this stuff about the Northwest and don't know like how much of a dog whistle this particular term is, and the reason that the people chose that name for their like crazy group. And I found a podcast that is really helpful with that. So I wanted to play a couple clips for you guys. But first, let me just make sure that this stops automatically deleting your comments like a dumbass. Ugh. Okay, totally. I'm totally getting there. Thank you. I'm glad you're coming with me on this because, boy. Okay, let me see if I can get this. Community? Oh, here's the community tab. My God, it's impossible to find. Nope. Save. Okay, it says settings saved. So I'm hoping that this will let you actually, you know, talk like an adult. So, fingers crossed. Okay, so. Well. Okay, so do you guys remember the Bundy Ranch fuckery? You guys remember that? It was a few years ago. They had like a issue with the Bureau of Land Management in Nevada. Saglia. Yeah, like they didn't want to pay their grazing fees, and they escalated to a standoff, like an armed standoff between these ranchers and yeah, well, I mean, okay, maybe he's not a bad guy, but these are the same people that also, I don't know if you guys heard about this though, because it was the same group of people who took over the Malheur Wildlife Preserve in southern Oregon, which there will be a reference to in this clip that will, one of the clips I'm gonna play you guys. But yeah, just so you guys know, okay, just hearing that a group who calls themselves Patriot Prayer opened fire on a crowd, like down at the Justice Center, which is where I was, on the day I was there, and I swear to, like, listen to your instincts. Like, if something doesn't feel right, just go. Like, you don't know what might happen. And the whole pipe bomb thing. Okay, so like, anyway. She was crazy. Now, how did we get from Patriot and Prayer to a 9mm out of a car window and a pipe bomb? Well, thank you. Yeah, you know, I felt so bad about, like, not, you know, having time to, well, I was really just there to, like, test everything out and to see if you know, if I could, like, scope it. I don't know, like, maybe I just prepare, like, too much, or maybe it's, like, imposter syndrome, but, like, I really want to make sure that, like, I have all my shit together. So, like, you know, when we go out and, like, do it live or whatever, if we do that, who knows, because now, I know, shit's escalating, and it's, like, really scary, and after everything in Kenosha, I mean, I don't know, like, I don't want to die. But anyway, regardless, totally off topic, but yeah, seriously, like, just if there is a weird vibe, just go. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna play this for you guys now, and so again, this is from Bundyville. Excuse me. The reason I brought up the whole thing about what happened with the Malheur Ranch, or the Malheur Wildlife Preserve, and the ranch in the Bundy Ranch in Nevada. Is it Nevada? Am I still saying it wrong? Anyway, is because this is called Bundyville, and it actually sort of connects all of the the connections in this weird nexus of, like, extremist thought. Now, none of the Bundys have actually done anything, like, violent themselves, but they know quite a few people who have. So, oh, also, if you're into like true crime, because I know that some people who subscribed to me way back are like into that, this is gonna dovetail with that as well. It's crazy shit. Like, welcome to the Northwest. Okay, so let me just, here we go. Bundyville is the people who, well, that's the name of the podcast, but Bundy are the people who like did all that crazy shit, but not actually kill anyone. Is it gonna work? Oh shit. Durr. One sec. Technical issues. Alright.
Before we get into the story of Stevens County, I want to address something that would probably come as a surprise to people listening who aren't familiar with the inland Northwest. You might think of the Northwestern U.S. as all rain showers and mountains and Nirvana records, coffee shops and weed stores on every corner, right? But this part of the Northwest I'm about to tell you about, Eastern Washington and North Idaho, it actually couldn't be less in line with that image.
Hope you can hear it.
It's a deeply conservative area of the West. It's hot and dry in the summer, cold as hell in the winter. In the past few years, some people have started to call this region the American Redoubt. A redoubt is a kind of military fortification, and they've been encouraging libertarians and preppers from around the country to make a home here. There are even redoubt realtors who will sell you a house complete with a bomb shelter. So this episode is about Stevens County, but it's also about this region as a whole. And you can't talk about the violent history of Stevens County without first understanding the Aryan Nations. The Aryan Nations was a neo-Nazi group with a compound in North Idaho. But in the summer of 1998, a simple wrong turn by a family coming home from a wedding led to its downfall. Victoria Keenan and her son were looking for a lost wallet when they turned down a back road. For reasons that have never really been explained, members of the Aryan Nations chased the Keenans for miles, ran them off the road, and held the family hostage at gunpoint. The Keenans would go on to sue the neo-Nazi group for millions of dollars, bankrupting them. And then they proceeded to buy the group's compound when it went up for auction. Those buildings were eventually bulldozed, effectively destroying the central gathering place for the region's white supremacists, forcing them to find new homes, new places to meet up. So they spread out to nearby communities, like Stevens County. But before that happened, the compound had been a beacon to white supremacists and hate groups for decades, a reason to gather in this part of the country.
So probably my first encounter with this was in the early 80s, about 1980 or 81.
For more than 3 decades, journalist Bill Moreland has been documenting the steady stream of violence coming out of this area. There's no reporter out there I know who has a longer track record of covering the white supremacist and anti-government movements in the West.
We had a cross burning at the Aryan Nations in North Idaho. And I had been on the staff of the Spokane Daily Chronicle at that point for about a decade. And cross burnings in the Northwest and in North Idaho in particular were not an everyday occurrence.
And in the 80s, much like today, people debated whether covering white supremacists amounted to advertising their ideas. It was part of the community that some of the area's white residents felt would go away if they ignored it, even as people who weren't white were being terrorized. Moreland says a columnist at the other paper in town thought they shouldn't even be talking about cross burnings.
He was of the school of thought that if you ignore them, they'll go away, and by writing about them, all you're doing is giving them publicity. And I have never to this day signed on to that belief system. And by the way, neither do major civil rights organizations.
According to those groups, shining a light on the problem is more effective than ignoring it. And Moreland says readers of the paper wanted to know who was burning crosses in their backyard. So Moreland...
Okay, so that's part 1 of 3, okay?
Go on to learn is that a guy named Richard Butler, founder of the Aryan Nations and the most prominent white supremacist in America, had chosen this corner of the country to set up shop.
Butler formed the Church of Jesus Christ Christian, which is a Christian identity.
Okay, Christian identity. That's the prayer part of Patriot Prayer. Like the Patriot movement and pray. What'd they say next?
Religious group, and he referred to the Aryan nations as the church's political arm.
People who believe in Christian identity are white supremacists. It's a religion that believes people of color don't have souls, that Jews are the spawn of Eve and Satan, and that the true tribes of Israel are white people.
People really
And as
believe
Butler's
this.
church became more entrenched, Moreland kept reporting on it, attending cross burnings and ceremonies where the KKK blessed knives and guns. And he started seeing more Christian identity churches popping up.
Prayer.
One in Sandpoint, Idaho, 2 in Stevens County, Washington. But the real turning point of violence in the Northwest, Moreland says, is when a group called the Order formed as an offshoot of the Aryan nations.
And so in 1983, secretly, the Order is formed in northeastern Washington, unbeknownst to me and everyone else. And then, but by 1984, specifically late in 1984, basically all hell breaks loose.
The Order was a group of guys who wanted to start a race war based on a novel called The Turner Diaries. That's the same book that Timothy McVeigh used to justify his bombing on the Murrah building in Oklahoma City about a decade later.
True crime part.
It didn't take long for the Order to start killing people. Moreland says a litany of violence began in 1984 with the murder of a Jewish radio host in Denver.
Following that, there were robberies of a adult bookstore in Spokane, the bombing of a synagogue in Boise, the robbery of an armored car in Seattle, in the Seattle area, the printing of counterfeit money on the presses of the Aryan nations, and then probably one of the hallmark crimes was the robbery of a armored car near Ukiah, California, that netted something on the order of
This is just the skimming
$4 to
the
$5
top.
million in
There's
cold cash
tons
in
of
money
this.
bags.
Tons.
All these crimes were meant to inspire and bankroll a white revolution. It's easy to look back now and see how they were connected. But at the time, the FBI had trouble figuring out who was committing all of them.
And this is in an era before the term terrorist meant anything to anybody. I mean, it's like domestic terrorism. What's that?
People didn't understand what was going on. And so, while law enforcement was trying to figure out who they were dealing with, Christian identity took root in this remote part of the country. Then, in 1992, a guy named Randy Weaver, who had been known to hang out at the Aryan Nations compound, failed to show up in court after selling illegal weapons to an ATF informant, and Moreland reported the story. The U.S. Marshals confronted Weaver, and the infamous Ruby Ridge standoff began. This was 2 hours from Stevens County, and militias and other anti-government groups flocked to the remote mountain where the Weaver family lived.
Ruby Ridge really was a lightning stick, if you will, that had occurred. And a lot of people after Ruby Ridge came together and said, we're never again going to let federal agents come into our, county and, encircle a cabin.
After Ruby Ridge, Moreland continued to report on the anti-government movement in this entire region. And often, his reporting brought him to Stevens County, Washington. Stevens County is very rural and sparsely populated. Just over 44,000 people live there, and it's bigger than some states back east. I asked Moreland to compile what he knew about violence there, and he came to our meeting with a very long list.
Well, okay, do you want me to walk through this whole list?
There's so much.
That's what?
I'll just interrupt this really quickly. This is why it took me a really long time to put this together and really kind of focus on the connections, because there's so much documented violence and terrorist attacks and terrorist attempts, and again, this is just skimming the top. There is so much to all of this. There's so many connections with other crazy shit that happened that you've heard about because it was in the news, because some crazy shit happened. So it took me, this is really condensed. There's a lot to this, and it's really hard sometimes to filter it all out. So if this is too long, I apologize for that. But if you live here, you find out all this kind of stuff, and it's like a secret history, and then you go down a rabbit hole, and you just you find out that, the Portland Police Bureau was, deputizing literally any member of the KKK in 1920s. Literally deputizing any civilian that was a member. In Oregon, we're talking. Portland Police Bureau. The same police bureau today that's brutalizing protesters. The connections are all right there. And it's not a there's a lot. Just bear with me here.
Yeah.
Stuff that's happened or
Yeah.
tied to Stevens County?
Yeah,
Holy shit.
I'll walk through it quickly.
Sure.
So Stevens.
Moreland said that in some cases, Stevens County residents were targeted just because they had Jewish-sounding last names. The violence was indiscriminate,
Yeah.
but a couple of prominent cases
sure
were
it
linked to a
wasn't.
place called the Ark. The Ark was a Christian identity church in Stevens County, up near the Canadian border. So even after
Please
the
don't
Aryan
protect
Nations
us.
was torn down, people could still go to the Ark. Moreland told me about a serial killer named Israel Keys.
Did you catch that? Israel Keys. Oh, this guy. No, not this, please. Israel Keys was a member of the Ark. Does anyone know who Israel Keys? Do I have any of my true crime people watching by any chance? Because he was a notorious serial killer. I mean, apparently, he was known for being really good at evading capture. He would hide caches of weapons throughout the United States, like various locations on the map. And then he would take months, and he did a bunch of crazy shit. Whatever. I think I know who this is.
Raised in Stevens County, and that
Got
he
issues.
attended the Ark, this Christian Identity Church up there,
Israel
with his
Keys.
parents.
And the Ark is important because the doctrine of white supremacy preached there led to more serious violence, like the Kehoe brothers, who also attended the Ark.
Another
And
name.
in July of 1998,
Notorious.
Chevy Kehoe, his father Kirby Kehoe, were charged in an indictment listing 57 separate crimes, including 5 murders. Chevy Kehoe and Daniel Lewis Lee were accused of conspiring to build a whites-only Aryan People's Republic beginning in 1993. So they're embarking on a whites-only kind of a concept, much like the Order had done back in the mid-'80s. Chevy Kehoe.
And strangely enough, that's actually what Oregon was originally settled as a white ethno-state front, like the Northwest Front. I think that was, what was it? The guy who endorsed Trump, who was in the KKK or something. That guy, he came up with this whole idea of the Northwest Front, which has been like an idea that's been recycled, probably in part because Oregon was originally settled as a whites-only land. People don't know this because they don't teach it because it's shameful, frankly. But it's our history. I mean, well, not my history. I mean, shit. I moved there in 2002, so I don't fucking know any of this shit. But, yeah, it's history. A lot of people don't know this. And there's a historical precedent for what we're seeing play out today in the streets. So, and has been playing out since May.
Skinhead were also accused of planning a pipe bomb that was detonated at the entrance of Spokane City Hall.
Moreland's list is wildly violent and took about 20 minutes to get through, so I won't tell you about every murder and threat. But the point
There's a
is,
lot.
it was all sort of a domino effect of violence that started at the Aryan Nations. It stretched back decades and continues today. This is a tiny population of people that produces way more than its share of violent extremists. It's a history that the people who live in Stevens County can't seem to get away from. It's a history that they're always trying to escape.
Yeah, like, okay, you'll meet people, like, if you're here, you'll meet people who are, like, from Stevens County, and they'll be like, You know, I'm from Stevens County. Like, it's, I don't know. I feel very bad for them. Everyone I've met from Stevens County has been very cool, though. But that's probably because they left and didn't want to, you know, be associated with the Aryan nations. Okay, I have one last thing, which ties it into sort of like modern day, like not the 80s, not 1992, but like I actually remember when this happened. I remember hearing it on the news. So this was pretty crazy.
I was living in Spokane, Washington, working as the music editor of the local alt-weekly
January
newspaper.
2011.
I wasn't really paying much attention to the region's extremists, but then they came to my neighborhood.
Breaking news from KXLY4. The FBI confirms a Stevens County man has been arrested in connection with the bomb placed in downtown Spokane on Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
It was a cold winter morning, the day of the Martin Luther King Jr. parade. The march was planned to go right through the center of the city. A man named Kevin Harpham, a white supremacist from Stevens County, Washington, planted a backpack bomb on the parade route near a metal bench and a brick wall across the street from my favorite bookstore. City workers saw that backpack and called it in. It was filled with wires, and it smelled awful.
And Nadine, of course, we now know that Kevin Harpham left his bomb here at Main in Washington. He intended to use a black powder explosion to spray all those people in that parade with a rain of these lead fishing weights.
Inside was a 6-inch long pipe bomb packed with fishing weights, coated in rat poison and human feces.
And this is going to take out windows. It's potentially going to damage cars. Anybody who's a pedestrian in the immediate vicinity is probably going to be injured and maybe even killed.
In the days after
The fishing weights would have torn through the marchers like a giant shotgun blast.
Harpham had gone as far as to coat his projectiles with rat poison in the hopes the shrapnel would cause uncontrolled bleeding in its victims.
At the time, I lived 1 block from the bomb site. Police tape closed off the entrance to my apartment building. Before anyone really knew what happened, I remember looking at all the guys in the hazmat suits, the bomb robot, the closed streets, and thinking, come on, is all this really necessary? Seemed like a big fuss. But I would come to find out I couldn't have been more wrong about that. Kevin Harpham's bomb and similar violence had plagued the Northwest for decades. But that history was something I'd had the privilege to conveniently navigate around as a white person living in a majority white city in the whitest part of the country. Reality was, I'd been living around white supremacists almost my entire life. The state of Oregon, where my family moved when I was a little kid, was seen as a Confederate holdout after the Civil War, a place that from its very foundation was built for whites and whites alone. But that part of the state's DNA was omitted from our history classes. We didn't learn that the KKK once had a strong presence among Oregon's state officials. We didn't know neighborhoods where our friends lived still had laws on the books that banned people of color from living there.
Lake
And
Oswego.
how would we? No one told us. Back in Washington in 2011, when Kevin Harpham planted a pipe bomb filled with rat poison and human shit down the street from me, it was the latest chapter in a long-running story in the Northwest, in America. Conspiracies and hate drove Harpham to violence. He was in the same neo-Nazi organization that several members of the Order had belonged to back in the 1980s. He posted to racist websites about 9/11 being an inside job, a false flag operation. Harpham's bomb was my introduction to this entire subject. I started devouring books on militias and anti-government groups, the Aryan nations in Idaho, the Ruby Ridge standoff. I needed to understand what the fuel was that had kept all this hate burning. I needed to understand why it took a bomb planted on a parade for it to feel like my problem. 5 years later, I was back home in Oregon again. It was 2016, a cold January day, and a group of armed men took over a wildlife refuge in southeastern Oregon.
Armed anti-government protesters occupying federal land at a national wildlife refuge. And
among them were militias, sovereign citizens, and white supremacists. One of my editors asked if I'd help with coverage from the courtroom. My life hasn't been the same since.
Yeah, so that's all we're gonna play of that, so don't worry. But Okay, and again, this is what, like, you could go off into a million different, like, I mean, I could add in 100, like, a million, well, like, fucking 10 million different, examples of this and how this impacts what happens today. But it's really extensive, and there is so much to all of it that, like, it's really hard to just, like, focus on what exactly you're trying to say and, like, what the point of, like, you know, giving you guys a background of this is. So, all right. Patriot prayer is not about patriotism or prayer. But it is a code word, it is a dog whistle, and it is what these people at the Justice Center that I showed you guys were a part of and about, and they all understood that. Now, that actual group is based in Vancouver, Washington, which, like, oh gee, thanks, perfect. But, like, okay, so, like, they are also closely affiliated with Proud Boys, or I think there actually might have been a rift at some point. I don't know. Like, there are, like, a bunch of, like, Antifa publications that explain, like, you know, that kind of follow these people, and, well, because, you know, the police sure as shit don't follow them. And, yeah, actually, end up coordinating with them, in fact, against, you know, protesters. So all of this is to say that these groups have been a part of the Northwest for a very long time. And if you get that part, then you start to realize that the people who are in these groups eventually end up getting, like, jobs in the community or in the Northwest, the larger region, sometimes as police. And that is what's led to what's been happening in Portland. These are people, a lot of police in Portland identify readily, much like what we saw in Kenosha just a couple days ago. They identify with the militia types. They identify with these people. They'll go easy on them. They'll, you know, be okay with them taking over a wildlife refuge. But they're not okay with people saying that Black Lives Matter. And that double standard is evil, obviously, and is a big part of why the protests are still happening 90 days later. It's been nearly 90 days of protests in Portland. People are getting toxicology results back from the canisters that they've been able to collect, and, you know, the ballistics, maybe not ballistics, but what am I trying to say? Munitions, the less lethal munitions. Soil samples, clothing samples, because a big part of all of this is that they don't tell you what they're exposing you to. So people have had to, like, go around and collect samples and then send it off to a lab to see what the police have been exposing everyone to. You know what it was? Benzene, xylene, toluene, etc. The volatile, or what is it volatile organic chemicals? VOCs. I can't remember what it stands for. But these are things that can interrupt, like, healthy cells. These are things that are carcinogens. These are things that can cause birth defects. These are things that were not designed to be subjected to for 90 days. And yet they've spent 90 days, the police, have spent 90 days exposing everyone who lives around that part of town in Portland to these chemicals. People are now moving out of that part of downtown Portland because of these chemicals, because they have been subjected to these chemicals every day for months. Yeah. It's really fucked up what's been happening. And, yes, very much so, yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's all considered actually, yeah, chemical warfare, and according to the Geneva Convention, you can't deploy them against, like, opponents in war, because it's considered, like, yeah, torture. It's inhumane. Oh, hey, Kev, what's up? Man, you know what I'm talking about. Portland police. Oh, man, it's been rough. It's been tough. How are you? Oh, gee, let's see, if I can I invite you up here? I don't know how to do that on this. Shit. I knew there was something I was supposed to do. Yeah, it's still going on every night. Yeah, quarantine language. Smart. Yeah, I've been, buying mail swag. What can I say? Mail merch. Oh. Brilliant. But yeah, I've been talking about, the Northwest, sort of, well, the parts that no one likes to talk about, the history no one likes to talk about because it's so damn ugly. Yeah. I know, their merch is kind of great, though, I must say. But yeah, so, like, okay. I don't know, have you been following any of that, or Government Town? Maybe. What's that? Like, I don't even know what that is. Government Town. What, is that like what, like, is that something that doesn't exist anymore? Like Vanport, or like, what? Because that, there's so many fucked up things that have happened. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, no, this makes sense. Like, okay. Yeah, I've been reading up on all of that stuff. Yeah, as it happens, I mean, as is their wont. I mean, okay. Okay, you okay, so, like, the Portland cops are bastards, right? Okay? Yeah. Seriously, people don't realize how much, like, just balls out nuttiness has happened here. And so that's kind of, I'm trying to, like, give people some context about, like, why everything is so crazy here right now. And, I know, Patriot Prayer. I don't know if you know about them, like Joey Gibson, that whole thing. I don't know. Excuse me. But yeah, oh no, don't do that.
2011.
No, I already played that. So yeah, I sort of gave, well, I just played a couple clips of Bundyville, which is, like, a podcast, which is pretty cool, and all about, like, all of the, like, right extremist groups that are around here that, like, no one ever really talks about, because it's, like, fucking crazy. But it keeps, like, rearing its ugly head. And let's see, what was I gonna do? What was I gonna say? I had, like, a whole thing. See, it's really hard to, like, pick all this stuff and, like, really decide which of these parts are relevant to, like, make a point, because there's so fucking much of it. There's so much of it. Yeah, but Dre just said that he wrote a paper about Oregon history, and he had no idea about any of this. Like, even the thing about, like, PPB, like, deputizing literally any member of the KKK back in the 1920s. And, like, them being an official, like, auxiliary force of the Portland Police Bureau. I mean, we haven't even gotten into Mark Kruger yet. Which, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, oh god, thank you for mentioning that, by the way. Okay, so all these different groups. David, right, okay. Yeah, totally. Like the whole, like, yeah, Northwest Front and everything, and I don't know. I mean, it's really nutty. Like, well, I mean, you know what I'm saying. But, like, yeah, exactly. And, man, shit. But yeah, no, I haven't even gotten to like, all of that yet. Like, okay, again, everyone's like, wait, what are you talking about? Okay, there's so much of this stuff. There's so much. Like, it is extensive. Like, okay, you're like a true crime kind of person, right? You know, like, Israel Keys, the serial killer that was, like, apprehended a few years ago? It was, like, fairly... Dude's from Stevens County, Washington. Dude was at the Ark. The Aryan Nations. That place, yeah. Crazy. But yeah, the Kehoes, the Cohees, fuck, I can never remember that name right. Right? Okay, so like, okay, so, see, he knows what I'm saying, you guys. It's not just, you know, my brain just being crazy as usual. It's like, this is actually very nebulous and has a lot of, like, interconnections. I'm just gonna show that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, oh, God. I just played a clip of, Bundyville explaining, like, the whole, like, 2011, Martin Luther King Day, attempted bombing in Spokane. Yeah. See, it's a real thing. Certain colors and all that. Oh, wow. Yeah, I'll bet, like, yeah, jeez. I mean, yeah, what's your take on all this? Let me see. Can I get you on here? It would be great to, like, have you on always. But, how do I do this? Oh, shit. Oh, wait, you know what? I can use that. Well, I might have to come back for it, but I can use that, fuck it. Go light stream thing. You wanna come on? Mm-hmm. Nice. No, I can, like, I know, I can end this. We can have a part 2. Because, like, I totally want your input on this. I got like 7 minutes. Nice. That's awesome, though. Like, you do a lot of lives. Like, I see it, and, like, or I need to. Maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to keep them, like, a bit shorter, but these days, just because, like, you know, I don't know when I was to sit through, like, hours and hours of just, I guess, me rambling, really. 34. Oh. Well, go for it. We'll see. And if you come back and I'm not on, just, like, I don't know, text me. I'll get back on. I want your input. Like, a lot of people don't know about this stuff, so, like, someone, yeah, who's, like, from around here, it'd be great to have your input. But, okay, so I guess, nice. Okay, sweet. Okay, so while you do that, yeah. So, speaking of infighting and between different groups, oh, always, most F. Nice. Okay, let me know. Get your one, though. I mean, after that RNC stuff, oh my god. But yeah, anyway, that shit was crazy. Did you guys watch that? I wasn't gonna watch the whole RNC thing, but, like, I saw Ivanka was on, and I fucking hate her, so I had to watch it. These people are insane. Like, these people, they're not in touch with reality. That's what that's what I got from that whole thing. Anyway, okay, so speaking of infighting, which Kev just mentioned. Okay, so there's also infighting amongst the, like, protest groups themselves. Now, the most, like, notorious one at this point is Rose City Justice. Now, the reason this is notorious, the reason a lot of people don't trust this like particular group, is because the guy who started it was a military police officer himself, and because they engage in a lot of tactics that are very how do you say, destructive, sabotaging, undermining to every other group, and to all the people who join this particular group, his group. Not only that, but this guy has been on a podcast saying that, the guy who like came up with Rose City Justice, saying that he had always dreamed of being an undercover FBI agent. I'm sorry, excuse me. Oof. So all of that together really puts his motives into question. So, and I don't know, if you guys know anything about the whole like COINTELPRO thing, then you probably know that eventually the FBI figured out that the easiest, most effective way to stymie groups that are into social justice and, you know, who have a mission around that, the easiest way to stymie them is to have someone come into their group and just act like a toxic person. That in and of itself creates enough distractions to deter the group as a whole. So let me turn. I gotta turn the air conditioner on, sorry. It's been hot, it's been like muggy here, it's awful. So, now, put all that together, it's a big reason why people don't really trust Rose City Justice as a group. Yeah, they break up also. They break up other protest groups, they separate them, and then the cops will swoop in and arrest everyone. It's pretty weird. Also, they've been seen with police-issued cattle prods. So, yeah. It's a lot of weird shit. A lot of reasons to not trust them. Now. Alright. So, okay, so this is Portland, okay? As Kev kind of just gave credence to, as someone who knows, as someone who's from here. There's a lot going on. Like, okay. I mean, I haven't even gotten to Ted Wheeler yet. Okay, Ted Wheeler is the mayor of Portland. In Portland, the mayor is also the police commissioner. So, when he was saying that he did not want the federal, like, troops, I don't know what to call them, the federal forces, the fucking BORTAC people to come into Portland, you have to know that it's bullshit. Because there's no possible way for them to have even been in Portland without him wanting them to be there. In fact, people even scoped out the joint office of Border Patrol and the Portland Police Bureau. It's on Southwest 3rd, it's above Starbucks, and they corresponded at the same times that the shift change for PPB happens. So that was their joint task force headquarters. We've, you see the pattern like enough times, it becomes self-evident. So everyone kind of like thinks of, oh, Ted Wheeler, he was, a liberal, he's progressive. No, he's not. He has been engaging in the exact same tactics that the feds were engaging in at the Justice Center. And by the way, see, there's so many parts to this. Okay. The Justice Center, I hope I made this clear in the 2 seconds that I panned around, is a concrete monstrosity. Like, there is nothing you can possibly destroy or destruct on the Justice Center. In normal times, it's used as a skate park for kids because it's all fucking concrete. So when people were saying like, oh, why did they start fires? It's literally impossible to start a fire at the Justice Center for the edifice. Also, when people have said like, oh, well, why did they target a federal building? Okay, they didn't target a federal building. Okay, the Justice Center contains the federal courthouse, the ICE office, and the headquarters of the local police department, Portland Police Bureau. Now, you tell me why the local police headquarters is in a federal building. It doesn't make sense, now does it? Because that's the reason people congregated at the Justice Center. Because the local police are in the Justice Center. But if you don't know that, if you're not from here, then, you know, you don't know any of this. And that's why we're here. So, how does all of this dovetail into, you know, the Patriot Prayer people opening fire onto the crowd from the Justice Center, in front of the Justice Center, being completely left alone? And you see, that's the thing, like, they leave them alone. But the actual protesters, they fuck them. Well, Rolling Stone has an article about this from a couple weeks ago, and if you'll indulge me, I'll read an excerpt from it. All right. Just to tie this all together. Okay. So, just start from here. In the national imagination, Portland reigns as a lampoonable bastion of progressivism, naked bike rides, and handlebar mustaches. But there is nothing Portlandia about the PPP. Police here routinely embrace the violent crowd control tactics that President Trump commanded to clear Lafayette Park, indiscriminately attacking protesters with tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, and other less lethal munitions. The Bureau has been hit with 2 temporary restraining orders from federal judges. I think now it's actually an injunction. But one rebuking the PPP for likely violations of protesters' rights to free speech and against excessive force. The other ordering the PPP to stop arresting journalists and legal observers for documenting police crashes with protesters. They were, in fact, targeting press. In fact, given the day, they still are. Let's see. I don't really care about that. Okay, so let's see. Right. Okay, so the use of force would bring condemnation from state officials, who had just passed legislation banning police use of tear gas, except in the case of a riot. The Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek, blasted the PPP's riot declaration as an abuse of the statute and its actions as unlawful. And this is why, also, by the way, every single night they declare a riot, even when people are literally just standing around. Okay, so, its actions as unlawful. Governor Kate Brown, oh, side note, okay, Governor Kate Brown. Okay, when Governor Kate Brown put the whole, like, mask mandate on, that whole thing in Oregon, state troopers were actually found in Corvallis to not wear masks. And when someone confronted them with the fact that Kate Brown had, you know, had just proclaimed this mask mandate or whatever, their response was, fuck that bitch. Yeah, elected official, fuck that bitch. And this, I feel like this little tidbit kind of explains exactly why so many people have such a problem with the PPP. Because they literally feel that they don't have to answer to anyone. That they don't have to follow the rules. That they can literally do whatever they want. Yeah, that's it. That's why the protests have been happening continuously for this whole time. That's why it sparked such, that's why it like struck such a chord around here. Because that's what the cops are like here. It's been a problem for a very long time. Okay. Anyway, Kate Brown, the one who they said, you know, fuck that bitch, who they clearly don't respect. Let's see, called on the PPB, that one, fuck that bitch, called on the PPB to de-escalate, warning that its use of force will do nothing to solve the underlying concerns of racial justice and police accountability raised by the protests. Fuck that bitch. Yet by the time the tear gas cleared the next morning, the city council proceeded as if nothing had happened, and did the union's bidding. It approved a year-long extension of the police contract, exempting cops from a city-wide salary freeze. Like, how many things, like, how many indications do you need that a particular group is above the law before you just say, like, yeah, apparently they're above the law. Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway. Alright. The most violent policing in Portland often takes place in our most progressive cities. This paradox is acute in Portland, but it is alive in metros across America, from Denver to Minneapolis to New York City, where ostensibly liberal mayors allow police departments to operate as a nearly autonomous branch of government, as if beyond their control. The conflict between progressive communities and reactionary cops is rooted in America's darkest history and deeply entrenched, says Philip Atiba Joff, CEO of the Center for Policing Equality at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Municipal policing in America arose in the service of slave owners, catching runaways, and after the Civil War, the same police brutally enforced segregation under Jim Crow. Outside the Deep South, early police were deputized to manage what local political leaders considered to be unruly immigrant populations, says Tracy Mears, a Yale law professor who served on President Obama's task force on 21st century policing. This legacy has never been repudiated, Joff insists. At no point in time in our history did we say, you know what, that was fucked up. We should not do it that way. We should imagine a different system. Modern policing has evolved on an ad hoc basis, often following political intuition and gut theories about deterring crime. There was no enabling legislation, Mears says, and precious little data to prove that policing strategies work. Think about the extent to which we tolerate this agency in which everyone carries a gun, she says, but that gets a pass to operate as an evidence-free zone. As a consequence, American policing continues to prioritize the safety and comfort of white people and property owners, often with acts of official violence. Most politicians in charge of police are deeply, profoundly ignorant about the legacy they've inherited, Joff argues, making even progressive politicians feckless reformers. It's just not the case that intention and ideology are likely to produce the kinds of outcomes and solutions we might want. Well, I mean, to put it another way, people are attracted to the job because they like the idea of having control and power over others. People who are that attracted to the idea of having control and power over others, to the fact that it becomes their dream career, are also likelier to abuse others. It's that entitlement. Okay. True reform depends on moving resources out of law and order, which primarily serves to enforce the existing social order, and investing in programs and services that increase public well-being and safety, Joff insists, and I agree. These are structural obstacles. There are structural obstacles. In many cities, union contracts limit the ability to reorient police resources or even provide meaningful oversight, as we see in Portland. Fear of change also creates a conceptual barrier. People think you need a police force oriented around the threat of the use of force in order to address violent neighborhoods, Mears says, when research has, in fact, proven for years that that's not correct. Oregon's history shares more in common with the Deep South than is commonly understood. The state was admitted to the Union on the eve of the Civil War as a white separatist state. Its constitution banned slavery and black people, declaring that no free N or M shall come, reside, or be within this state, and ordering their removal by public officers. Made moot by the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, this racist language was not amended until 1926. And by then, Oregon had emerged as a hotbed of Klan activity in the 1920s. Remember? They deputized the Klan. The police deputized the Klan in the 1920s. Now we're talking about 1926. See? It all connects. This is like, man, I almost made like a Pepe Sylvia type like fucking map for all this shit. Like, this is, but it's all true. It's all real. This is, and like, the echoes still reverberate today throughout Portland. Okay. Oh, okay, so 1926. And by then, Oregon had emerged as a hotbed of Klan activity, using racial terror to keep all but a few thousand blacks out of state. Only during World War II, when black laborers arrived by the thousands to work in Portland shipyards, did Oregon's color barrier begin to break down. Even today, however, Portland is known as the whitest big city in America. It really is too white. I mean, it's too white. It really is. All right. 3/4 of the population is white. Only 6% of residents are black. The black community, historically redlined into a single neighborhood near downtown, is now buffeted by gentrification and displacement, as white millennials seeking the dream of the 90s have transformed Mississippi Avenue into a stretch of boutiques, brew pubs, and farm-to-table restaurants. Portland police have long intimated, harassed, and killed black residents without facing legal consequence. Yeah, shit. Marine veteran Lloyd Tony Stevenson's gravestone in Willamette National Cemetery says Vietnam, but Stevenson was killed on the streets of Portland in a 1985 altercation with police who ended his life with a sleeper chokehold. Now this is notorious, this next part that I'm gonna read. In shades of the Eric Garner homicide a generation later, Stevenson's killing sparked national outrage. But Portland police responded to the controversy with arrogant, racist defiance, selling t-shirts out of a precinct parking lot that read, "Don't choke 'em, smoke 'em." Yeah. Mark Kruger. Well, he comes next. Okay. In recent years, the police here have also shot and killed many unarmed black people. In 2003, 21-year-old Kendra James was gunned down during a traffic stop. In 2010, 25-year-old Aaron Campbell was killed by a sharpshooter during a welfare check. In 2017, Police shot 17-year-old Quanice Hayes with an AR-15 while he was on his knees during an arrest. Yeah, they actually told him to both hold still, don't move, and also put your hands up. 2 different police were yelling at him. Different directives. And he couldn't put his hands up while also remaining still. And they shot him. 17 years old. Anyway. It's really fucked up. Anyway, okay. None of these cases were prosecuted. There's no appearance of justice when it comes to the death of a black person at the hands of the police, says City Council member Joanne Hardesty, who formerly served as a president of the local NAACP. The Portland Police Bureau has been under supervision by the U.S. Department of Justice for much of the past decade for a pattern or practice of excessive force in violation of the Fourth Amendment against people with mental illness, many of them black. Andre Gladen, a legally blind 36-year-old with schizophrenia, prompted a 911 call by lying on a stranger's porch last year. Cops who were called to remove him instead killed him after. They say he grabbed an officer's knife. Which I don't fucking believe. I'm sorry, like, you really... it's really kind of a bummer when, like, you see corporate media and, like, you know, mainstream outlets talking about, oh, well, police say that this happened, as if it's the gospel truth, when we've seen how many times they lie. Anyway. The PPB has achieved substantial compliance with the DOJ agreement. But Hardesty notes bitterly, we're killing more people today with mental health issues by the Portland police than we did before the DOJ came to town. Teresa Rayford is the founder of Don't Shoot PDX, a nonprofit that works to counter police violence. She was 10 years old in 1981 when Portland cops infamously dropped a pair of dead possums in front of her grandparents' soul food restaurant. That was a challenge against our humanity, Rayford recalls, that let me know really early that people considered us as not really citizens or people. 80% of PPB officers are white, and the vast majority live outside the city of Portland, in the region's even whiter, far more conservative suburbs and exurbs, like Stevenson. A lot, very similar. The Bureau continues to be linked to white supremacy. Here's Mark Kruger. In 2010, a Portland cop was disciplined. Mark Kruger was disciplined for having erected plaques celebrating Nazi-era German soldiers in a public park. He kept his job. Yes, that happened in Rocky Butte Park, which is the same place that a trans woman was found hanged earlier this, not even earlier this year, like a couple months ago. You know, they say it's a suicide, but, oh, that's my speaker. But it just doesn't, I don't believe it. I'll say it that way. I don't believe it. Okay. It's fucked up. Same park that the Nazi, the fucking Nazi war memorial was erected by Mark Kruger. A guy who, by the way, was known to dress up in Nazi memorabilia and regalia. A guy who also graffitied the, like, swastikas and stuff in the same fucking park. This is all well known. A guy who made jokes on tape about brutalizing female protesters in the past. He has a pension from the Portland Police Bureau. By the way, if you want to actually like try to file a complaint about any of this, it can take up to 2 years to even just get a hearing. And that's just the first step. This is why people protest. This is why people are still protesting. And this is why most people locally support people who are protesting. Because this is bullshit. Okay. Here we go. In 2019, a PPB officer was caught sending chummy texts to Patriot Prayer leader Joey Gibson, advising his right-wing agitators how to avoid arrest. A police review did not discipline the officer. And in fact, I mentioned this a month ago when I came on here. People had actually ID'd that same officer as one of the people who, like, were taking part in the disciplinary actions against the protesters. This guy. Oh yeah, and everyone forgets the thing about the rifles on the top of the parking structures. This is Portland. This is all a part of it. So, yeah, it's not just Portlandia. All right. Oh. They're actually working with the Proud Boys, says Rayford. The police, she means. And yeah, she's right. To Rayford, who finished third in the May primary for mayor, there's no mystery why Portland cops cracked down violently on protests targeting the Bureau itself. It is a power struggle to maintain whiteness and white supremacy that dictates the policy here, she argues. You still wonder why you're getting your ass whooped at Black Lives Matter protests? Because you're standing up for black people in Whitelandia. Portland has a vigorous history of protest. In the early 1990s, President George H.W. Bush denigrated the city as Little Beirut from the reception he received here. Also, side note, one of the famous anti-war protests that came out, groups that came out to greet George H.W. Bush when he visited here. They actually, and this is well known. Okay. They ate mashed potatoes that had red, white, and blue food coloring in it. They ate a bunch of it, then took Ipecac, and then went to George H.W. Bush's landing or whatever, and threw it up in front of him. Yeah. So protesting is also kind of a thing in Portland. By the way. All right, so, yeah, the city is home to many activists who identify as anarchists and anti-fascists, whose protest tactics can include criminal mischief, like damaging property or lighting dumpster fires. In the days after George Floyd's killing, agitators targeted the Multnomah County Justice Center, a high-rise jail and courtroom complex downtown. They tagged walls with graffiti, smashed street-facing windows, and even lit small fires inside the building. Right, I remember that was the 27th riot night, right? Their spray-painted agenda, defund the police state, might have seemed fringe just weeks ago. But the cultural earthquake of Floyd's killing has shifted the Overton window, putting such demands at the center of the national political debate. The Justice Center, now barricaded with plywood, and I think it is still barricaded, actually. I think about it. I know they said that they were bringing the feds out, or of Portland, but they haven't actually left. They're still there. Okay. In ritualized fashion, predominantly peaceful protesters gather to decry police violence. When someone in the crowd goes too far, throwing a water bottle, pointing lasers at cops, the police order the crowd to disperse before charging protesters. PPB tactics earned the force a sharp rebuke and partial restraining order on the use of tear gas and other less than lethal munitions from a federal district court. Responding on June 9th to a suit brought by Don't Shoot PDX, Teresa Rayford, Judge Marco Hernandez cited evidence that officers have violated the constitutional rights of peaceful protesters. The judge faulted the PPB for failing to discriminate between criminals and peaceful demonstrators, citing a protester who was subjected to rubber bullets, tear gas, and a flashbang at close range as he was calmly walking, trying to comply with officers' orders. Portland police have also attacked journalists documenting the protests. Beth Nakamura, a photographer for the Oregonian, was roughed up by a baton-wielding riot cop. Before I was struck, I more than once held up my badge and one of my cameras, she tells Rolling Stone. I was saying, press, press. The cop responded, I don't give a fuck. The PPB's public information officer, Lieutenant Tina Jones, tells Rolling Stone that police wearing riot helmets cannot be expected to differentiate between protesters and the press. She also released a video warning reporters to obey police commands, making an odd slip of the tongue. The unlawful orders apply to everyone without exception. The unlawful orders. Yeah. Sounds about right. Here we go. The man presiding over this brutal mess is Mayor Ted Wheeler, who also serves as police commissioner. A sixth-generation Oregonian, which means that his family were one of the people who settled the land in this Confederate holdout. Get it? Yeah, it's creepy. A sixth-generation Oregonian and scion of a timber fortune, Wheeler is a credential collector, an Eagle Scout with blah, 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 blah. On his CV, it really doesn't matter. Protesters now denounce him as Tear Gas Ted, and he's facing shaky re-election prospects against a little-known urban planner, Sarah, I have no idea how to pronounce her last name. So, etc. Blah. Wheeler with his bullshit. Mess. Going to the gang unit, notoriously racist. They got dispersed or disbanded because of this, I guess. Did it just happen? I believe so. June to be 50 million, ending police patrols at public schools and on mass transit, disbanding its notoriously racist gang unit. There you go. Yeah, 5 million unarmed response team to attend to people with mental health crises. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. But there's one thing that's... Okay. Yeah, anyway. Sorry, that kind of went off the rails right there. But I think you guys get what I'm saying. All of this is still a factor. All of this is still in play. And all of this is still happening. In fact, cops are like going around and slashing people's tires now. Especially if they're press members. Like, this is, like, none of this is right. It's really messed up here. And the fact that they've been subjecting people to, like, carcinogen-laden smoke to the point where, like, the ground is fucking saturated and there's gonna have to be, like, some EPA, like, you know, repudiation or, like, remediation, I don't know what it's called, but, of VOCs, which can cause, like, birth defects and can affect people hormonally for, like, ever, and can just fuck people up in a million different ways. This shit is not right. Oh god, we haven't even gotten into the Border Patrol, BORTAC, and, oh my god, the people who fund the police unions. There are a million different directions that this can go in. But, okay. Anyway, all of this is what brings us to last week, where you end up at the Justice Center with me for 2 minutes, and the crowd getting shot at afterwards by Patriot Prayer, who espouse the same beliefs that, for all intents and purposes, the PPB espouse as well. Anyway, I've been on here for like, what, like an hour and 20 minutes? So unless you guys, are interested in this, unless I get some feedback, I'm about to end this because I did not mean to be on here this long. And there are so many things that I have not mentioned and haven't even covered that it's like, I could be on here for like 2 more hours, easily. I mean, we could go into, like, we could go into Portac, we could go into, you know, the as yet unconfirmed allegations of, well, I mean, I say that to cover my ass legally, but let's be real. Women who have been arrested by the federal Customs and Border Patrol, who have been like, you know, held by them, you know, the people who are getting snatched off the streets, and have been assaulted sexually by the people holding her. Something that Border Patrol is notorious for, and in fact there was just a expose about them employing systemically on migrants, and how Border Patrol, BORTAC rather, Border Tactical Patrol, is well known to be the most violent and racist faction within the Department of Homeland Security. This is all like, this is all documented, this is all there. We could go all into that because there's a lot more there. We could go into the fact that the bottom line is that all of these people, all of these, you know, Department of Homeland Security type people and BORTAC people, they're really probably mercenaries contracted by Eric Prince, who's also been working in China and probably contracting the concentration camps there. All this stuff is connected. It's a mess. And this is why I feel so strongly that we really do need to vote and get the people who are willing to hire contracted mercenaries like Eric Prince's troops to enact brutality on American civilians, on any civilians anywhere, really, but especially, like, you know, in a country that has all these ideas about, you know, civil liberties and freedoms, and, you know, we talk about that a lot, to enact that on people who have chosen, you know, however far back in the family, to be Americans. Yeah, the irony. So yeah, it really is important to vote. Because otherwise these people like Eric Prince and Bill Barr just keep getting hired again and again. They don't actually get prosecuted because, you know, that doesn't look good politically. But, or like someone like Steve Mnuchin, who was a big part of the 2008 recession and housing bubble burst. He played a big part in that. Anyway, you know, subprime mortgage loans, all that. He was in there. And now he's back. And now he's fucking with our mail. So it's very important. Please vote. Please vote for Biden. And now, if that's all, I'll end this. And I hope this has not been like totally crazy, because there are so many different things and so many like moving parts to all of this. I really am trying to make this a bit more accessible to people, because I know that, you know, people don't live here, people don't know what's up, people don't understand what it's like here. And what's happening, especially lately, is fucking crazy. So okay, well, I hope this has been somehow informative. God help us all. God help this nation. God help this town. God help this region. Thanks for sticking by.